No, there's one of them I know up here is the sinking.
I know.
It can't be. It's embarrassing yourself. Put it to scale.
It's not like the old chairs we had up here where you used to have to like sit on your legs to be able to see over the.
So you can quote me
Are we
on
on?
the scale. It'd be like that.
All right, I will call the Tuesday, November 15th, 2022 meeting of the Wethersfield Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Joe, could you please take the roll call?
Sure. Rich Roberts. Here. Ryan Allard. Here. Joe Hammer here. Jim Hughes. George Oikel. Here. Tom Deane.
Here.
Tony Homicki.
Here.
Dave Edwards. Michael Vieira. David Drake.
Here.
Peter Lambruni.
Here.
Paul Thompson.
All right, thanks. So 6 regular members, 2 alternates. I'll seat both the alternates. We have 2 public hearing items tonight. The way we do public hearings is first the applicant comes up, introduces themselves, makes their presentation. Commission may have some questions for the applicant. There may be some back and forth. Following that, we open it up to members of the public, if any, who want to comment on the application. Following the public comment portion, we ask the applicant to come back up, respond to any public comment or additional questions, concerns that the commission may have. If after the end of that conversation, commission believes we have enough information to make a decision, we would vote to close the public hearing, go into deliberation, and vote on the item. If after the portion of the public hearing, there's still open issues, questions that remain outstanding, we may continue the hearing to another meeting, but you'll know what's happening and we'll tell you when it's continued to, so there won't be any mystery there. That said, the first item, 3.1, public hearing 2125-22Z. Nishant Patel, member owner of Shree Mate LLC, DBA Manousos Liquors, seeking a zoning text amendment to section 58B1 under provisions of section 10.1F of the Wethersfield Zoning Regulations, adding a minimum distance requirement for package store locations. So could you just please give us your name and address for the record?
Mr. Chairman, good evening. Ms. Bradley, good evening. Members of the Zoning Commission, good evening. Richard Kuzmak is my name. I'm here with Nish Patel, who you may recall is a member of both the LLCs that own the property that Manousos Liquors is located on, as well as the operating company that operates the liquor store. Our being here tonight is kind of a sequel to our being here a couple of months ago when we were entertaining, at least as part of consideration, an application that involved, in part, the distance requirement from one package store to another. And in the process of examining that, we have determined, at least in our opinion, that the current regulations do not contain any specific distance requirements between locations. My reading of the regulations includes a consideration of what constitutes clusters and or undue concentration of specifically package stores, which is what we're interested in. Mr. Patel is not only the owner of Manousos, but he has a number of other package store locations outside of Wethersfield, specifically Rocky Hill and in Walcott. So he's had considerable experience in the business. The state does not mandate specific distance requirements for any type of liquor establishment, be it package stores or for the sale of alcohol on the premises. They leave it up to the towns to do that. In my research of adjoining towns and those not necessarily abutting Wethersfield, I found that every town that I've looked at has a regulation which provides for specific distance requirements to avoid the necessity of trying to determine a vague description of what constitutes a cluster or what constitutes undue concentration. Obviously, both are subject to interpretation, may or may not be legally defensible. I don't know that. Haven't seen any sort of court decisions on the matter. So we had hoped to spur your interest in creating distance requirements, which could constitute a benefit for both a property owner who's considering uses for his property that might be appropriate. He could look at the regulations, determine whether or not that particular use is a permitted use on that property. And from the town's point of view of not having to entertain applications which may be totally unreasonable in relation to a request for a use in proximity to another use. So hopefully we can engage in a conversation that could lead to a reasonable resolution of that issue. We feel a significant benefit to the town as well as property owners to do so. Now, I will add that we had anticipated being at the November 1 meeting, and in order to make that meeting, we had limited time within which to prepare a proposed change in the regulations to accommodate specifically package stores. We did not include any consideration of distance requirements for package stores, for example, for churches and or from schools. We certainly have no objection to that. And if the commission determines that it wants to consider this particular proposal, it could be included at a later time with distance requirements for schools, churches, and other appropriate services and establishments that could be affected by an alcohol sales location, such as a package store. So hopefully, to avoid the necessity of having to interpret what exists as I indicate, unclear. There's no clear standard that exists right now that I can decipher from the existing regulations, and I think it's highly appropriate. I've looked at Newington, I've looked at Rocky Hill, Cromwell, West Hartford, East Hartford. All of those towns have specific distance requirements, and they all have a 1,500-foot distance requirement. So it's kind of universally accepted as being reasonable and appropriate for at least package stores. It differs in terms of locations or distance requirements from schools and churches, which is, at least from what I've been able to determine, in the 500-foot range. So hopefully we can create a standard that everybody can agree to rather than having to interpret it application per application and avoid unnecessary consideration. With that, Mr. Patel is here. He can certainly add to what I've had to say or answer any questions that the commissioners may have.
I just had a couple quick questions. Have you done any I'm not sure how many package store permits there are in total in town right now, but under your proposed 1,500-foot standard, are there current locations that are that close to each other of existing businesses?
Maybe Mr. Patel can answer that question for you.
Yeah. So, what we're proposing, and that is also what has happened in Cromwell and Rocky Hill in the past, as whatever was there was considered to be grandfathered in. So that's why we never did the research of like whether somebody's already close enough, because whoever is close enough, I guess they're already there. We can't ask them to remove anything.
You know, I understand that, but I still think it could have a, for example, if somebody wanted to expand their store area, square footage, even if it were in an existing building, I think there could be an issue in terms of whether they could do that anymore. So I would just be interested, I don't know if you know, Denise, how many currently would fall?
That would be considered as extension of use. And even though they might be within the 1,500 feet, because that is something that happened in Cromwell. Somebody's trying to expand and they were within the 1,500 feet of the other store, and they were allowed to expand the business because of the reason that they were already there. So they were just increasing the square footage of the space. They weren't necessarily going in for a brand-new permit.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just really, two things, I guess. One, I'm just trying to get a handle of how your proposed 1,500 feet relates to what's existing, generally speaking, just to, get some sense of that. And number two, I do think that if there's an existing one, I do think there'd be an issue on whether they could enlarge a non-conforming use potentially. I don't know, Denise, Rich, what others might think on that.
Our proposal is not intended to affect existing operations. Only anything that may be newly proposed.
I guess to follow up on Joe's question then, do you have any information for us as to if these 1,500-foot radius circumference diameter was applied to each of the existing package stores, what land in town in commercial zones would be available for another one?
I can tell you that there are, from what I've seen and the research that I've done with regard to the towns that I mentioned, there's different requirements or different definitions of how you calculate the 1,500 feet. The proposal that we've made is tailored very similar, if not identical, to the regulations that exist in Cromwell. Now, what we don't know, I don't think, is we've not made any effort to try to determine the existing locations in the town of Wethersfield and how this regulation might affect the existing regulations. We don't know the answer to that, but, but again.
I guess maybe my question wasn't clear. If you take the existing locations and draw a 1,500-foot radius around each of them, what Silas, Deane Highway, Berlin Turnpike property is outside of those radii that could be eligible for a package store if we were to adopt this regulation?
So we haven't done that research, to be honest. I mean, if that's something that you guys would like to see, we could certainly do that.
Well,
But-
how many do we have left?
One.
So the issue is, we could adopt this and then we would literally never be able to bring in that other business, I think. I don't know, that's my interpretation of it.
Well, I think that's the
That's the
idea.
fear, that's the worry.
I mean,
And I think that's the, is that the point?
so, I mean, I would talk specifically in Old Wethersfield, there's not a single package store in Old Wethersfield, right? I mean, putting this regulation in is also going to help to spread out the package stores enough where there's a package store in certain neighborhoods and not just in one, like whether it be Celestine Highway or Burlington Pike. So I'm sure we could do the study and we could be more specific of where can that last permit go. But we haven't done the study, so I won't be able to answer the question right on top of my head.
Okay.
But there is places where I am aware of where the permit can go, yes.
George?
You know, I'm trying to figure out what we're trying to do here. So-called concentration of liquor stores was a negative back 30, 50 years ago when I was a kid. Now, wait a minute. I'm just trying to figure out what the idea is of trying to spread out and make it difficult to locate, perhaps because of the limited amount of area that one could be put. And so I want you to say, what is the problem so far, the way Wethersfield is doing it versus what the towns you've enumerated or suggested have spread out their liquor stores?
The problem is that you don't have a
You
clear...
know, I'm not one of those people that goes out to a liquor store every night or running around the town drunk in my 50, 60 years around here, so I'm not into that. The point is, gentlemen,
Way to
I'm trying to figure
encapsulate
out
their
what
customers.
you're trying to do with by spreading this thing out.
Yeah, why is
You know,
Wethersfield different from all the
Doesn't
other
make any
towns?
sense to
I mean, the idea is that you have no clear standard in your regulations as
do you mean,
for
fair
distance
standard?
requirements, right. And as we know,
Clear.
liquor-type establishments are specially treated by the state legislature. And as it currently exists, the standards you have are very vague. What is a cluster? What constitutes a cluster? What constitutes an undue concentration of package stores? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, well, I know-
What's the problem that we have to deal with?
Well, the problem is that you have to deal with it, and you may be in a position of trying to defend not a legally tenable regulation, because it's unclear, it's vague,
It's vague,
vague.
and we've operated how long with it? Well, don't you have a history? You must have done some research on that kind of thing. No, you haven't, okay. Thank you.
Research on what?
How long that regulation has been there? I think, I'm assuming the regulation was always there.
Yeah.
I would have to say. So over the years, most towns have adapted some sort of regulation with the package store. And the reason for that is because of the same reason, like they didn't want all the package store to be in the proximity of each other in just one location where it ruins the weather, the neighborhood, or whatever it may be. Because even with the operating hours, that has pushed it to 10 o'clock in the night and things like that, being open on the Sunday with the church services and things like that. So they have always avoided package stores to be, just like, bars to be in one place, nightclubs to be.
We've always put regulations in the past, otherwise we wouldn't be functioning okay. And I don't think I see the police making a big deal, or anyone else, or our citizens in the town, with the situation as it is now. So are we making a problem where there isn't one?
Well, so I think the last application that we had for the package store, which was across from, I think, Wethersfield Liquors, we had a Wethersfield resident who was arguing the case because they really didn't wanted another package store, and there was no need for it. I think that's what they were saying about, and with the hours that the package stores operate and the traffic and those other things that we talked about. But if we have what we're proposing, that eliminates that need, because then, it's more specific for the applicant to decide whether that is where they can go or not, instead of I don't know how the decision was based upon last time, but it was based upon, we don't really need another package store there because of the traffic and other things, but I think those things can be arguable, right? But if we have this language, I think I feel like it's gonna be more specific, and, we won't have to have the meeting or the zoning hearing for somebody to apply for a special permit. I mean, they would still have to apply for a special permit because it's a liquor permit, but I think it would help an applicant to determine whether they could go there or not.
Right.
Peter?
It's getting a little bit fuzzy here. So let me just kind of take another tact here. By population, we're allowed, I think, 10, right, in this town? And we have 9 now, so regardless of whatever regulations we have, one more is possible, right? So that's a given.
Yeah.
So, as far as I'm concerned, what's important to me is that, we don't infringe on that right, which is 10. If you're proposing something that says, okay, let's spread them out better, let's define how close they should be, I'm okay with that, I really am. But I wouldn't be okay if that would limit us to, I'll just throw out a crazy number, 8. If you do your research and find out that, geez, if you apply this 1,500, oh my God, it's only 8. So we're already 1 over, and that's grandfather, and when that one goes out, then only 8 are left. So I think I'd like to know that. If you come back and say, well, it doesn't matter, it's 10, it's always gonna be 10, but you'll spread them out in different locations, maybe in Old Wethersfield, as you're suggesting, as opposed to putting 3 on the Silas Deane Highway, I'm okay with that. But I would like to know that top number. Is that affected or not by this proposal?
So I'll definitely get back to you on after doing, after sitting down with the town planner and seeing what the distance is. But currently, to be able to put the 10-1 is a possibility. I know on top of my head, without a question, that there is enough room for the 10th one to go in Wethersfield town.
With the 1,500?
With the 1,500, yes.
Well, maybe you should check it with the town planner.
No, I will, and that's why I said I will, but I know that the 10th
But are you
one,
restricting it to a very limited area of town? I don't think that's fair to a lot of people.
no, I understand what you're saying, and no, it's not.
Which areas are open and which are not, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, Cedar Hill wouldn't be a great place for a package store.
And I think another option as you look at that could be what would 1,000 feet do compared to the 1,500, if the 1,500 is overly restrictive.
How long is Silas
But
Deane Highway?
I would add one more, I would add one more thing to it, but I would really like schools to be considered as a part of it, schools and churches, and it's for a very specific reason, and most towns have it, because you obviously don't want a package store opening up right next to the school.
Well, I think in your effort to put this 1,500-foot radius in section B1, it looks like you missed section B2 that talks about schools and churches and so forth. And also B2B would be in conflict with B1 that you've proposed.
what's the conflict, Rich?
Well, it's the proximity language that they're trying to avoid by putting the strict 1,500 into B1. And B2 already includes a consideration of proximity to schools and churches. If they want to put a number limit on that too, then I think we have some serious, GIS work to do. And you'd probably discover that all of the existing ones are non-conforming too.
Yeah. As I indicated, we had very limited time within which to get this proposal to be able to meet the deadline for the November 1st meeting. So we were kind of constrained to just dealing with package stores, not necessarily with an overhaul of the entire regulation. So we just never got to that point.
What was the urgency of the November 1st meeting?
What is the urgency?
I'm sorry.
What was the urgency of getting it in for the November 1st meeting that prevented you from doing
We
any
just-
due diligence?
Well, we thought that it was an idea that the commission should entertain. I can tell you that we also had a concern with the possibility of another proposal coming on the Silas Deane Highway that might be within that 1,500-foot distance. So there was an interest in getting it heard as soon as possible.
Okay, that answers it.
I'd like to know why 1,500, how long some of the area communities have had 1,500 on their books. And if possible, you could give us some of the copies that they have within their regulations. I mean,
Yeah.
We're the only one in Greater Hartford. It's quite a surprise to me. I'd be surprised.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm aware of Rocky Hill, Cromwell, Newington, East, West Hartford.
East Hartford?
Yeah, even like
Go as
Simsbury.
far out as you want to give us some good examples.
Yes,
of how
yes, no, we could get you the copies,
that's a
that's,
violation.
Well, I mean, and the flip side of that is, you know, we've had the regulation that we have now for over 30 years, you know.
I think that's what
I'm
George
guessing
has done.
at some point during George's tenure, we had a foot limit in there and changed away from it. And
I think we did the 10-year master plan, it was under discussion, but we decided not to make any change to it. It wasn't brought up.
Okay, working okay.
I think it was at some point changed to this proximity language,
Yeah, but what you had sent was the
which
1991
also
regs.
included this, yeah.
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 And that covers my whole time here.
Rich can,
Yeah.
I think it was said by maybe Rich, I just want to emphasize the point. When you do your study here, it's not only the limit is 10 available or not, but will this regulation constrain it such that there are open spaces where you could put a 10th, but they may be in areas where it's not practical, like Cedar Street that was mentioned, for example. So I think you have to be able to convince us, in my opinion, that it doesn't really infringe too much on the commercial districts. And,
No.
you know, if that's the case, then that would be okay, for me anyways. But I think you have to have that evidence. You just can't say, I believe so.
I'm not, no, I'm not. I'm not expecting you to take my word for it. Obviously, I would sit down with the town planner and measure the distance and show the proof of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I mean, I think this is a solution in search of a problem. I mean, the only time we've ever had an issue is when someone wants to come in and we have a whole bunch of people who already have locations who suddenly don't want to have any competition. George?
Yeah, I have the same feeling, and if you were thinking of, or worrying about another competitor near you, you don't think this, you could come to us and say, you think that there's too much concentration or it's too close, and you could be against that application, and you don't think this commission, in its good judgment, based upon how many years we had this, that we're gonna make the right decision to maybe not allow that? Because we might think that there is a concentration. But where you get into arbitrary distances, it bothers me a lot, as we've already discussed here tonight.
Well, it's not arbitrary, it's consistent with other towns, and there's some logic why the other towns went 1,500. I'd like to understand that too, you know, why they chose 1,500.
But a lot of the towns, Peter, are newer towns, still developing. This town has been around for quite a long while.
But West
And we've
Hartford-
dealt with these
Yeah, but
things
West
for quite a
Hartford's been
while.
around a long time too.
Yeah, I know, that's all.
West Hartford's been around a long
Rich,
time.
can I just mention? In our thing, it says, judgment of the board, there will not be created a cluster or undue concentration of establishments. It's really not saying anything. So,
It's a cluster.
and I'm not against what we have, but the idea of 1,500 square feet is maybe okay. If someone came in and we said the judgment of the board is too close, and I owned a business, man, I'd come back, I'd sue the town. I don't know, if you said, I'm too close,
That's what they're
it's the
saying.
judgment of the board, I don't know what that means. So, I mean, maybe we gotta think it through, that's all. This, what we have now is not real clear at all. Maybe it doesn't need to be clear, but maybe I think it should be clear.
I mean, either way, without a map, showing us what this actually means.
Oh, absolutely. Again, how long is Silaston Highway, the length of it in Wethersfield?
I don't know, 3.5 miles?
Is it 3.5 miles? So that's a fair amount. It's 15,000 square feet, so there's a lot of square footage there.
Rich, I could just bring one other point up. I did bring this up with EDIC, because I'm now representing us there.
You missed the meeting where we were making the appointment.
Anyways, I just said, this has come up, and we're gonna be, it will come up, I said, and we'll probably need to deliberate on it. And their sentiment was, it's not a bad idea to spread it out. That was the business community. All of them pretty much were on that point. It's not a bad idea to spread. As a matter of fact, they almost went as far as to say maybe even 10 is too much. But, there was a little bit of difference of opinion on that. But I think just about everybody in the DIC thought it would be a good idea to make sure it was clear and then we should spread it out. So that's just another point of input.
Rich? Yeah, I guess just one other related to looking at where the 1,500 feet would fall. If the result of that is going to be that we can't do any more on the Silas Deane Highway or the Berlin Turnpike, which are heavily traveled commercial corridors, and if the only available spaces are going to be in areas where they're close to neighborhoods, to residential uses, churches, schools and stuff, then it's a special permit use to begin with, then I think we're basically going down the road of there won't be a 10th one, perhaps. So, and I guess what I'm saying is, in the grand scheme of things, I'd rather see it on a road that has 20,000 cars a day going up and down it potentially than 500 feet from a residential home, if that's our choice. So I think we need to see how it lays out.
Well, we're willing to provide the information that the commission...
One thing I want to add, I see how it's been looked upon, like I'm trying to avoid competition and things like that, and maybe it's not favorable to business, but also the community. The Wethersfield community town, it does not need another package store, although it may be allowed from the state legislation point where per 2,500 people, there's one permit that's available, but necessarily, does the community really need another package store? Yes, they're not going to come to every meeting here and say, hey, we don't really need a package store. But I feel like this would help, because if somebody's applying for a liquor permit, nobody's reading at what zoning hearings are happening, but once the package store comes in, and they're like, we didn't need another package store, definitely not next to a school, or especially on Silas Deane Highway where we got the church, not next to a church. So I want the panel to also think of it as, I see how it's been taken upon, I'm trying to avoid the competition, but is it really going to help the town to put another package store in town? I want everybody to consider that, that's all.
Well, is there a possibility that we already have too many?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a question, the other...
When I bought the place, I thought these things were already in place, and which I should. It's my bad that I didn't look the zoning regulation, but I thought it was pretty standard across the board. Then came to the realization it's not standard in each town. So yeah, something that has worked, to your point, for 30 years, and with the language that it has worked with, I think it could be more specific, and then just avoid the whole conversation or the chances of a lawsuit with saying, what's a cluster, what's close proximity? None of that stuff is really defined.
Okay.
Sounds like you got homework to do.
Yes. I'm definitely going to do that to show, for sure.
All right. It is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public that want to comment on this application? Okay. Anything else before we, I guess we're going to continue the hearing? Is that what people want to do? All right, somebody make a motion.
I move to continue the hearing to our next meeting.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, abstentions? All right, it's continued to the next meeting. When is that, December something?
What's the reason now we're continuing it, Mr. Chairman?
To get additional information
Information
on,
from staff and/or?
well, no, from the applicant on what the 1,500 actually means in reality.
Some of the things we're talking
Some more
about, give more
kind of
information.
background on how
Fine,
other towns do things.
otherwise I almost was gonna change my vote. December 6th.
Yeah, December 6th.
No, I won't, I'll follow on with that.
All right, okay.
Thank you. Yeah,
December
we'll
6th.
we'll undertake the responsibility of answering the commissioner's questions, and hopefully you'll be in a better position to make a decision on what you want to do to proceed. Thanks, and have a
Thank you.
great
All
evening.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
All right, next item, 3.2, public hearing 212422Z. Mahmut Alihodzic seeking a special permit in accordance with section 36C, accessory buildings and structures, residential outbuildings of the Wethersfield Zoning Regulations for a shed larger than permitted at 12 Halfpenny Lane.
Good evening. My name is Mahmut Alihodzic of 12 Halfpenny Lane in Wethersfield. I'm seeking a permit for a shed which is 14 by 24. I believe it's 336 square. The reason I'm building a shed, I'm trying to build next summer. I'm trying to open a landscaping company to have a space for storage machinery and general purpose.
Okay, how big is what you're putting in? Because the picture we have is 12 by 24, but the map
14 by
shows 12
24.
by 26.
14 by 24.
How many square feet is that?
336.
12 by 24?
Yeah,
Well, that's what,
26 is the lot line.
okay. He said 14 by 24?
Yeah, that's what he just said.
Okay.
Let's see that.
Well, the application says 12 by 24.
Yeah, the application shows 12.
12, okay, the 12 by 24.
Okay.
If it says on the application,
So the picture of the garage has 14 by 24 on the top and 12 by 24 on the bottom.
Right, so I thought it was like that.
Well, and the map has 12 by 24.
Taking the hand-drawn map, I'm gonna take that as word.
George?
Yeah, my usual diligence, and I pride myself in going out and looking at sites, and mainly because I'm retired and you guys have to work, so I understand all that all the time.
Somebody gotta keep this on.
And once more, I did that, and I've been condemned in the past for talking to the applicant, because they sometimes greet me wondering what the hell I'm doing on site, as this gentleman did, but, no, a quick conversation. But
Tricked you?
He didn't influence me one way or
I
the
thought you
other.
were lost.
But simply that I went out and saw, as usual, the site is good on three sides. He's surrounded pretty much by the fencing or shrubs or so forth over in Halfpenny Lane. I didn't know what I'd find over there, but that's one of the newer parts of town, and, but he has no problem except with one next door neighbor, and I assume that neighbor, if they had a concern, they say, see the sign out there, they would be here
I
and
spoke with
say
him,
one thing or the other, and he can comment to us whether the neighbors said anything to him or would be here, or could be. And, but the other three neighbors or so, there's no problem with, everything is shrouded, and no problems with this.
I spoke with him already, and he's excited. Same when I bought the house in 2019, the house was vacant for 2 years, and he had worries what was going to happen to the house, and he was amazed what I turned the house into, and he was excited as well now that I'm building a shed.
Peter?
You had mentioned that this is for storage for a business?
I'm trying to open a landscaping of next year,
But are
2022.
you going to be having equipment going in and out of this? I mean, this is a
Just-
residential area.
Just small equipment,
Like what?
food landscaping.
Is that allowed?
Well, without knowing what the scope of the business is, I mean, if
Right.
it's him just taking a lawnmower and putting it on a pickup truck and driving away to do something, then it probably is, but, you know, if it's crews of 9 people with snowplows,
No.
then it's not. So, but that,
Right, it isn't because he'd have to have a driveway down this side yard, and I don't think I would go much for that, but
Is,
it's difficult to slight slope to it.
so like this permit asking for the larger shed, he would need to come back if he wanted to eventually start a business, home business?
well, I mean, if the business is one that
I mean, I
exceeds what is permitted as of right, he would have to come back and get permission for that.
So, like, regardless of his hopes and dreams of the use for it, it's just a shed
I
until
mean,
it's a business.
I'm okay if he's just storing a small piece of equipment.
Small, like,
I mean, in my property, I have 4 lawnmowers, and I have a large shed, so I
Fix
mean-
them then.
Well, one of them doesn't work,
All right,
3 do. But I got 4 acres, so it takes a while to cut the grass. But
So I'm currently truck driver and I bring
yeah,
stuff,
so, I mean,
tires.
as long as it's just benign storage of some
It's
small
just
equipment.
small equipment, yeah.
Yeah, but if you got people going in and out of there, that would be disruptive.
No.
That's my question.
No, I just,
Okay. Tony?
Thank you. Next time, if you ever submit an application, try to put the site plan to scale. The site plan shows this garage almost bigger than the house. Number one, and I'm grateful George did walk around and see the neighbors, see if there's some privacy edges of any type. Future reference, I think photographs of that privacy issue prior to the leaves coming down might have also been helpful also, but I think our specific focus language is just what it is. A garage, a shed that's oversized, and that's what we're here tonight for.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not vastly oversized.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and the other thing is if he wanted to really use it with serious equipment, getting the driveway down that left side might be a slight
No,
problem,
so-
you don't think so? No?
it's just,
But it is sloped slightly, isn't it?
yes.
There's no driveway going to
No,
this, is there?
it's just.
It's
so-
just grass,
to the house,
right?
Yeah, grass.
All right. Anybody else? This is a public hearing. Is there anybody in the public that wants to comment on this application? Anybody in the public? Okay, don't see anybody. Any last questions for the applicant?
Will you have electricity there, any lighting?
No.
So there won't be
No, just-
anything to distract from the neighbors?
No.
All right. Anything else? If not, someone want to make a motion to close the hearing?
So motion made, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by George, second by Tony. All in favor of closing the hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, hearing's closed. Somebody want to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve 2124-22-Z as submitted.
Second.
All right, any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, next item, pre-application review 2176 and 2180 Berlin Turnpike.
Sorry, it's a new easel. So we're just putting it together. Good evening, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Kevin Soley. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut with Soley Engineering. We're here tonight to talk about we wanted to come before the commission today to talk about a potential regulation amendment we're considering proposing to the Wethersfield regulations, and we wanted to solicit some feedback from the commission. The turn that around, I think. I'm going to hold it up.
Undue concentration
I'm going to hold them up so you guys can see.
For now, you want to just put it on the chair while you're working on it? So you don't have to.
I don't mind. I don't mind. So,
pay a lot for that.
So the properties that we're primarily here to discuss are 2176 and 2180 Berlin Turnpike. So just to kind of orient everyone, this is on the southwest side of town. The town line actually runs kind of right through here. So continuing up the Berlin Turnpike, you have East Cedar Street, and then the town line with Newington, Salvation Army, the Callahan's Bowling Alley. It's just to orient everybody. So the site itself is currently kind of blighted. There was an old house on the property for several years. It's in disrepair. There's an old foundation. And it's obviously uniquely shaped. The grades drop off pretty considerably as you go away from Berlin Turnpike, and then there's a really large wetland system on the property in the rear. So the site itself that we're talking about is, I think it's been looked at for other developments in the past. Nothing's come forward. So what we're working on is an opportunity to kind of create an economic development and an investment in the community. But what we're looking to propose here is a self-storage facility. Now, we know that self-storage has been something that the commission has considered in recent past and weighted very heavily. You created regulations specifically for that in 2020, modified them again, as I think is most recent as June of last year. So as we looked at this and we approached it, we wanted to see if there was a thoughtful way we could consider the existing regulations with some very minor tweaks that wouldn't have undue consequences or potential implications on other, parts of the community, and it would still give the commission the ability to really control and consider applications on a case-by-case basis. So your current regulations, 5.1.2, actually, I'm going to ask Chris to hold this. So the current regulations, 5.1.2, establish all of the additional requirements that go into these projects. And it's been very artfully crafted where it establishes you can allow it as long as it's mixed use. It has a certain requirement for percentage of the building to be used for something other than self-storage. But there is a provision in here that allows for the reuse of existing buildings for self-storage if the commission deems that a number of thresholds are met, and without having that mixed-use component. So what we were considering is, given the shape and the configuration of the property that we're looking at, it really doesn't lend itself to be able to create a development that meets the mixed-use aspect of the current regulations. So what we wanted to see if the commission would consider some very minor regulation revisions, which would open up an opportunity that would impact this property, but not a lot of other properties in the area. So I want to just kind of run through. Under D, it says the commission can modify the multi-story and/or mixed-use requirements of these regulations for the adaptive reuse of existing buildings. And we were hoping the commission could consider or construction of new buildings upon defining that. And then the first three I'm going to read are the current regs, and the fourth would be an additional one. Market demand exists for self-storage as demonstrated by a market assessment. Number 2, site and/or building conditions make the site unsuitable or infeasible for the other permitted uses in the zone. Number 3, the building design criteria of these regulations are satisfied. You actually created some really nice regulations around these facilities, so it would be a nice positive addition to the community. And then number 4 is new language we'd also propose. A proposed building that houses only self-storage uses shall have access from a state road and be greater than 275 feet from any state roadway right-of-way. So by putting in 2 small provisions there, 1, a site would have to have access off a state road, and 2, the facility itself would have to be located more than 275 feet away from the roadway. We think that would address a lot of the other concerns that have been, well-founded in previous applications the commission could consider. And to demonstrate that, there's only two zones today where self-storage is permitted under the current regulations. It's I got it here, sorry. The RC and the BP. So when you look at those two zones, they're shown in the darker blue and the, darker purple. And when you look at those corridors where those zones exist, especially along the Silas Deane Highway and then over on the Berlin Turnpike that we're talking about, a lot of those corridors are, or at least along the Berlin Turnpike, we know the commission considered an application where it was proposed to have that building right up on the road, which could, result in an undesirable condition. But a lot of the rest of the parcels on that area, they're either developed with large shopping centers with strong anchors that's very unlikely to be redeveloped for a self-storage facility. The economics wouldn't really prove that to be feasible. And the rest of those parcels are they're not deep enough to allow for a self-storage, an independent self-storage development to be located along those properties with the depth that's left. So what we're showing is the right-of-way itself a 275-foot setback to demonstrate that a lot of those parcels, it wouldn't really be applicable. Additionally, then when you go over to the Berlin Turnpike side, again, it's the same thing. Some of the parcels that are a little bit larger, they're actually owned by the town, or they're otherwise improved with, again, large format shopping centers that really wouldn't lend itself to have something being torn down to develop just for self-storage. And the property that we're looking at, I can just flip that over. Yeah. Again, one of the challenges with the site itself is you can see the large, lighter colors is the existing wetlands on the property, and that 275-foot buffer comes right in front of the building that we have in front of you. So we think that if the commission would consider these minor regulation amendments, it would allow for this application to come forward, and I think it would really create an opportunity to create a contributing parcel to the tax base that otherwise has had some challenges with trying to get developed. We know that, obviously this commission weighs regulation amendments, very, heavily, but we think that this is a reasonable tweak, and I think we could certainly demonstrate and do a more detailed, in-depth analysis of other properties along the corridor to show that this really wouldn't have those other unintended consequences. But we're here to seek some feedback and hear what the commission's thoughts are.
Yeah, how close are you to the Progress Road wooded area where it's behind it? Is that going to really interfere? Because those are really nice spaces back there, and I hate to have you take all the trees down and have this big open thing, because that's...
Yeah, so just so you can see on this parcel, those wetland limits are about here. So there's still a massive buffer behind and pretty much around where the only development activity would take place immediately behind. This is the mattress store, right behind there. And again, it drops down, so we'd be down in a hole. So you wouldn't really have that, some of the concerns regarding it being right up on the road or something that's out of character.
The other thing too, the outside storage, what's the point of that? What would that look like?
Outside storage?
Just rent places for people to put junk in there?
No, not junk. No, not junk by any means. You could have, RV parking or something along those lines. Boats, things like that.
Because there's one going in across the street, up the street a little bit. And every one that we looked at, it's been pretty well enclosed instead of having hundreds of garage doors. And again, there's a certain look we were always looked at.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's early, but...
So, and again, I know we're here to talk about a potential regulation amendment, but it's always my opinion, we want to give a commission a full story to weigh what we're talking about. You know, we are working with an operator who actually has several facilities, and it's a fully climate-controlled building where it's not your traditional single-story, outside garage doors, unconditioned space. It's a little bit of a higher, quality development with a lot of high-end finishes on their buildings and the facades, with some kind of canopy covered parking and things like that to really create a better environment.
So that, it's gonna be like, kinda like that, that's what you're thinking?
Yes, that would be, this is what we would be proposing if the commission would consider this regulation amendment.
Joe?
Thanks. Could you, maybe on the drawing you showed before where the proposed building would be, could you point to where the outside storage would be on that?
Joe, just so be down here.
Or where the diagonal?
Sure, so it would be in that bottom corner, and to kind of see it on an aerial, we should have put the rendering on the aerial, it'd be kind of tucked in over here.
Okay, and I guess, and this is about an 11-acre in total parcel, according to what I read?
I believe so, but we probably have less than about 3 acres or even closer to 2 of kind of developable area, given the wetlands and the topography.
Right, so that was another question, and again, I'm not sure where I come out on the idea of changing the regs, but I guess one other thought that occurred to me is if we were, to think about doing this, if that were the consensus, could it be even more restrictive than they've proposed so that it has, for example, a minimum 10-acre
Acreage.
lot size and that no more than, that a minimum of X percent of the overall lot must remain as undisturbed open space or something like that?
I think I'm actually mad at myself for not including that in our proposed language, because those types of protection measures are something that are really, critical for commissions to consider. And the access from the state road is one. The separation from the road is another common one that a lot of commissions consider. But I agree with you. The minimum parcel size, and then even percent disturbed are two great additions to kind of give that additional protection.
George, then Peter.
Oh, okay. Several things. I'll get to a couple of them here. Do you see the need for more storage space in Wethersfield?
We do. Our client has.
Basis.
Well, they've conducted a market analysis based on a number of different factors, number of population, population within a 5-mile radius. There are a number of things that are looked at in these market studies, and even understanding and knowing what else is proposed in the area. Those all get weighed in and considered. And there's still, we think we could still demonstrate an established need for this in the community.
You really do. Although I question it, but. Anyway, have you met the town design requirements other than what you may have talked about already?
Yes.
You have?
Yes.
I don't think you have.
Okay.
I don't even think you have met the requirements of the diagrams I've seen here, or the architectural diagrams, breaks and things like that we're talking about. What about the residential part of our requirements?
Well, it's not a residential component, it's a mixed-use component to have it include something other than storage. It's not a specific requirement to mix it with residential. Well, we're asking the commission to consider not requiring a mixed-use component for properties that could meet a certain set of criteria, which would be this potential property.
Why did you say that again to me?
So
why did you?
He can't do it unless he asks for a change.
Correct. We wouldn't be able to pursue a project at this location without the commission's consideration to change the regs. And frankly, when you look at the property itself, that's been blighted and marketed for a long time, its challenges, it poses a number of challenges on how to develop it. And I think from a use standpoint, self-storage is a very It could be a very appropriate use. It's not, it doesn't create an undue strain on municipal services. It's a very low traffic generator. There are a number of other reasons on why it is a positive land use for commissions to consider.
Do you think that driveway is too steep going down into it?
No, we would be able to design it in accordance with, standard, engineering methodologies and ensure that it wouldn't be too steep. Well, I think we have what was our max slope? We have 8%, an 8 to 10% slope.
Okay.
There's about a 40-foot grade change, so again, we're trying to see if there's an opportunity to develop the property and create a positive.
You mentioned sewage, sanitary sewer in particular, to me. Now, that runs down into the Orchard Brook or through there, or how does it go out of the location?
Is the sewer up on the road?
That's a technical question, but I'm familiar with this site from the past, so that's why I'm asking.
Go ahead, speak up.
Chris Pulowski for the record, Solely Engineering. So there's a main MDC sanitary sewer main that actually travels right across our site. And there's several manholes located in and around the property, one of which we will be tying into.
That probably goes out through like Orchard Brook, I think, out to Prospect Street, I guess.
Yeah, it runs parallel with Berlin Turnpike. I apologize, I don't know where it ends up, but there is a main there that's right on our property.
Just asking.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate the comments. So
I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Peter.
So I understand what you're requesting is the following. Because this site would not lend itself under the current regulations to put that building that you're proposing, you want to add a regulation, which would be number 4, basically, in one word that allows not just existing building, but any site under those conditions to allow storage, right?
Correct. Storage is allowed, but to not require the mixed-use component.
I understand it, okay.
Yes.
Now, you're kind of tailoring the regulations to fit your building on this site, that's how I see it, which is understandable. I'm not making a comment other than, how does it impact everywhere else? And you showed one diagram, you went through that pretty quick. Could you walk through that again? So if we go ahead and do this, what does it do in the other areas? Can you talk through that again?
Sure. So the only place where self-storage is permitted is the two zones I mentioned, the BC and the.
Yeah, could you, no,
Yep.
show us the,
So that's the blue
okay.
and the purple. Okay?
All right.
So by crafting some language, you can really restrict where it would ultimately land. So self-storage, under the current regulations, is already permitted in those two zones.
Okay.
But it requires the mixed-use component. What we would propose is to craft the language so that it wouldn't necessarily end up where this could pop up anywhere in these areas. The existing controls would still remain. And when you add that 275-foot setback from the road, access from a state highway, and then also minimum parcel size and overall limited disturbance, it would greatly restrict.
How does
So
it restrict those colors? That's my question.
Sure, it doesn't restrict the colors, but what it does is the individual
Yeah, the
lots,
colors.
well, what it'll do is, and we can, if the commission sees this as a possible good thing, we can come forward with a formal application, and we can kind of do a deep dive of all the parcels. But if you look along the Silas Deane Highway, a lot of these parcels, so this is the 270-foot setback line, right? So when you start to look at some of these, the parcels that exist, either they're already developed and there's only a small portion of the parcel that's beyond that 275 feet. So it really wouldn't lend itself to allow for a self-storage building. And frankly, a lot of these parcels already are improved with other shopping centers with large tenants and things like that.
Let me simplify my question.
Sure.
Is there anywhere in those purple and blue areas that you could put another building like this if we approve this regulation?
I don't believe so.
So basically, it's a one-shot deal. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to understand, that's all.
Yeah.
Are you in the purple or the blue, your site?
We're in the blue. We're right here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess you could Could also consider just doing it in whatever the zone is in the blue too, and not in the purple, couldn't you, as a further way of limiting it?
Mr. Chairman, doesn't the commission have the latitude to allow a situation where there is no mixed use without changing the regulation?
No,
No?
no,
So it has to be
when we did the rewrite after the lengthy moratorium, we landed on requiring mixed use as a way to kind of soften the impact of potential self-storage facilities, particularly on the Silas Deane Highway.
Makes sense, all right.
It sounds like adding the setback and the state road access is the
Yeah, this
way
kind
of
of becomes,
mitigating how much impact it'll have.
yeah, because I mean, it makes this one kind of sui generis that, you know, there are no parcels this size where the development would be that far from the road, and that much of the property would have to be kept open, you know, unless you took the Marshall's Shopping Center, tore down everything that's
Right.
on it, put the self-storage way to the back, and planted the front part of it in alfalfa, you know, which is not economically
Doesn't sound like that's.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Rich? Unless I'm thinking, well, generally, it sounds like a good use for this property. I mean, there's only so much you can do with that, right? I mean, I'm just kind of thinking,
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know.
let's say you don't have a lot of traffic impact, pays a good taxes.
Well, I'm thinking back at all of the things that have come in before,
Yeah.
you know, and every one of them has had an issue of its own. And in large part, I think the concerns that we have had were driven by the volume of traffic that was going to be coming out of the site. I
Which
mean,
is,
there've been a
which just
number
goes,
of.
this goes away here, though.
Yeah, I mean, a number of apartment and,
Yeah.
you know, that kind of thing, and just the idea of school buses parking on the Berlin Turnpike with kids walking.
Yeah, based on your comments, this would be positive, based on what you're just saying right now, or,
It would not raise some of the same concerns that we have had with respect to other things, and even though.
Less negative.
Yeah, I mean, you know, frankly, I don't know what the perfect use of this site would be.
We think we
You
do.
know, yeah, yeah, I mean, we just eat what's on our plate. And so far, what's been put on our plate is really not very tasty. The one thing that I do have a concern about on what you've proposed is the outdoor storage, particularly since it's on the end by the Orchard Brook condominiums. And those, you know, those people feel very strongly about maintaining their, the integrity of their neighborhood. They've been kind of imposed upon by a variety of things in the past. And, you know, if you came in with outdoor storage, you would hear about it.
And listen, that's why we're here. We want to hear feedback, so we can certainly, look at, that existing buffer, expanding it, supplementing it, and I think, we wanted to hear that feedback.
Yeah, I mean, and frankly, I can't remember whether it's this property or a different one. There was some kind of emergency access possibility that may have been required as a component of other projects that would have gone through there.
you mean like fire truck type stuff?
Yeah.
I think that was an apartment use.
Yeah, because I mean, it was like,
Trying to
you've got
negotiate.
400 people trapped in a hole.
Yeah, that was a problem.
Yeah.
What's outdoor storage mean exactly? What-
Well, it would be, if somebody wanted a place to park a boat for the winter,
You know
they
what
could.
Moore's has?
Yes.
Oh, and outside the structure, in other words. Okay, open. Okay. Gotcha, thank you.
Couldn't you solve mixed use with just like taking one of his units and putting a door on it for rent?
The challenge is that, the challenge is the percentage that needs to be dedicated to an alternate use. And we looked at, could we call it something else? Could we, but it's just
What is the
creates.
percent- What is the percentage for this?
50% of the
50%,
first
oh,
floor.
okay, so significant, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and even before that, when, I remember a couple of the apartment ones, they had gone through the, kind of the motions of creating a mixed use. One of them was going to have like a Pizza Hut delivery. Another one, I think, was going to have a gazebo with a Coke machine in it and call that
What was
commercial.
substantial?
Can we put a liquor store in?
Get out your protractor.
How many square feet are you proposing?
So it would be a three-story facility, a total of 99,000 square feet.
How many units would be in that? Do you have any idea?
630, 627.
Why so large?
Well, this is kind of what, you know, our client is doing in the market right now. They're expanding pretty rapidly and through in and around Connecticut and Westchester. So this would actually be, I think, the fourth or fifth facility we're working on in the state of Connecticut.
So if you came back as a follow-up to George's comments, you'd be able to give us a little bit market analysis and
We would.
what the rental rates would be,
Yes.
traffic patterns anyway on it.
Yep.
Traffic in and out, lighting structure, indirect lighting.
Yes, exactly. Light, yes, you know, security plan, you know, these are gated facilities, all those aspects, yeah. And we could talk a little bit more about the market and the demand that's, you know, we believe is out there.
How high would it be? How-
We would be looking at a total height of less than 40 feet
Okay.
with three
So, I
stories.
mean,
And
it
again,
basically would be level with,
and we're 40 feet in the hole, yeah, it's below the road, so it wouldn't create, you know, and I know I know that's also probably a lot of the concern too. You don't want this towering building right up along the road, Berlin Turnpike, or you know, and this site kind of answers all those questions.
yeah, because I mean, they're putting up I guess the elevator towers for the new one, which is just kind of bringing home to roost one of my concerns about how high it is. Peter?
Which, it's a fairly large building, it's impressive. That outdoor space that you want to store, how important is this to this project, given the scope of the other building?
You know,
I mean, if it's going to be an issue, here's my point.
Yeah.
And neighbors don't want to see it. I know you said you could put additional buffers and so forth. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't work. How important is that to the viability of this project, is my question, I guess.
You know, I think it's important, but I'd want to have another conversation with my client about it. But I think that they feel strongly enough about the market that they think this is a good spot. So I'm sure we could look at that component.
I'm more concerned about the wetlands and any trucks or any oil leakage or any problems that could potentially happen with the outside storage.
Yeah, when your RV decides to purge for the winter.
Or just fall off into the marsh.
And I guess I share the outdoor storage concern. I mean, I don't know if you want to have some aspect of it. Can you just include it inside your building and still maintain the buffers and the distances from the wetlands and all that stuff? But I guess on the bigger picture, you know, without knowing how much the Wetlands Commission would even let you do on that site, as we've discussed all those limiting factors, the open space percentage, the minimum lot size, but basically the open space percentage, to me, that's a potential trade-off, you know, here, and if it could ever fit on any other site, that we're taking a site with a lot of wetlands, land that shouldn't be developed, preserving it, but at the same time getting some commercial use, you know, out of the site. So I see that as a plus on both sides, the development and the conservation potentially.
Yeah. George?
Yeah, now we have a storage facility being built about a mile north of this. And you're aware of that, of course. You consider yours different from that one, and how so?
I don't know all the details of that specific facility, but I know that my client has certainly dove into it a lot and included that in their market study. And I think that I think we're a little bit. They believe that this is a little bit of a differentiator from a product standpoint, just based on the fact that, you know, it's fully climate controlled. But yeah, I don't want to speak because I'm not sure. I don't know the details of that other facility, but I know that they, through their study, they still believe that there's a need.
No, okay. Denise, do you want to comment on that question?
I mean, I can provide you
Yeah.
information for the other storage facility.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Does that analysis, do they get like capacity of what the existing storage facilities are?
I think they look at like the unit count and, you know, population density and, you know, population within 5 miles, things like that.
but how much of it is actually used?
Yeah, they look at vacancy and, yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, nobody wants, if there's a
You do
big
like
empty
a
storage
population
facility,
census, But if
yeah.
everybody has giant basements,
Yeah.
you're not really gonna have much of a need, so, all right, thank you.
If you have 600 there, how many cars do you expect to be there one second of the day? I mean, with 600 units?
Oh.
You expect 10 cars there all the time?
Not even,
Really?
no.
600
We wouldn't
units,
expect,
10
no, I think, we do have, I think, about 20 parking spaces shown on our plan, but in reality, there may be a couple employees, and people kind of come in and out, but it's
You gonna
not,
have employees there all the time?
yes.
So have a little office there or something.
Some of these even have housing. You're not gonna have overnight housing for anybody there?
No, we're not looking to do apartments.
Nothing that
you're aware of. No.
Okay, George?
Just one more final question. My question before, and I'm gonna go at it again, is the design of the structure you shows. We've asked to have some of these expansive areas broken up with some ways of breaking it and giving it a little bit more quality to a blank slate on the side of a building. Could be windows, breaks, and changes of the esplanade itself, whatnot. But have your architect take a look at things, if you would. Thank you.
Yeah, we will, and we appreciate that feedback, because it helps us improve what we're proposing before we get to you.
I think that's good, and I guess just not to argue with George, but to point out that that's the side that nobody's ever going to see.
That's exactly what I'm thinking while I was saying.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah, I mean,
saying?
unless when the
That's
leaves,
probably the wrong side.
when the leaves are off, the people at Brandywine go walking through the Japanese
he's probably thinking about
barberries and
this
look
side,
at the
or the
back
other
of the
side.
self-storage.
Yeah, that's just facing the
Little
woods.
something.
It's just facing the woods. I think we want to turn it around, the better side.
I can't see that well, but there's no garage doors. Are there garage doors on the outside? They're all inside. I can't see that far. Or are those garage doors?
There are some, but actually there are some, but, but that's not their primary focus. They want to create a facility you can kind of come in and have access through, secure, and then most of the units are interior.
Do you have emergency access on all sides of the building?
We don't currently show a path along the wetland side. I'm sure that's something as we get into the process, we'll be coordinating that with, the fire marshal and everybody else. I think he's talking about vehicle. Yeah.
Did, you have the basins, you have one at the north, one at the south. Is it split up because of just the topography, or is there wiggle room to kind of shift the building around and maybe have the outside storage on the north side and have a larger basin to the south?
It's certainly something we can look at now, now that we're having this discussion,
Just as potential responses to, we don't want outside storage
Yeah.
that's that close to our home,
Yeah.
if there's
I mean,
an option A, B, C.
The topography is challenging, right? We got to get down, we have to get down pretty quick, so we're kind of limited, and stormwater is something we can kind of tuck in, but the self-storage access may pose some more challenges, but we can certainly look at that.
Yeah, I was looking at the access, emergency access all the way around the building, and wondering, I'm just sort of speaking off the top of my head, it looks like if the parking and all that was on the other side, on the east side, you'd be able to shift the building a little bit more, because I feel like you're going to be pretty limited. You're going to end up with a structure in order to make sure you don't have any wetland impact on that east side. If you try to have emergency access around that side, I wonder if squeezing it closer makes.
Well, they probably lined it up to the setbacks.
It's pretty tight. It's a narrow site.
But
It has its challenges.
No, I get it. George?
Yeah, another one I thought of. It may be a little early in this, but have you had any discussions with the Orchard Brook people or any people to the south about how they feel about this?
We haven't yet. Obviously, we'd have some hurdles to jump through, and we would certainly engage with, give them their notice and things like that. And But I think this, again, I think the feedback we got here tonight
That's
is
all right. I'm
great
trying
regarding
to
that.
honor one of my former commissioners who used to be president of the Orchard Brook, and, he was on it, died a couple of years ago, but that's all. I'm just asking because I thought they might have some concern, I don't know.
What's the long dimension? I can't read on this little thing here.
12,000.
12,000 millimeters? Millimeters.
Of the building?
Yeah. I can't
340?
read. Yeah,
It's about 340 by 100,
340.
340 feet.
So it's a football field then,
Yeah,
about a football field. Big building, yeah,
without an end zone.
big building.
No doubt about it.
Yeah,
Outside storage.
big building.
All right.
Pay a lot of taxes.
Anything else?
Go ahead, Tom. Ask him.
Would you consider Yukon blue instead of Tennessee orange?
I'm a UConn grad, so.
We get camo.
No, the other thing we just look at, what's Newington got to do with this, with that little thing? Is that something we typically
Well,
do?
the frontage is there.
Yeah, in our driveway,
Oh, okay,
yeah, our driveway comes through Newington, so,
fair enough, that's it.
yeah.
That's the edge.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing relatively positive feedback, and I think we've talked about a couple of additional protection measures that we could incorporate into a proposed application, but it seems like you guys would be generally favorable to consider something like this?
It seems like there's not many other options possible for a sliver like this.
Yeah.
I think it's just important to come into the meeting with some aggressive, context-sensitive, phrasing that you can use when you're actually doing the proposal.
Understood.
Because, you're
I work hard on that
you're obviously
outside
gonna
thing,
run
I think
into a
that
lot of
outside's gonna be a
neighborhood-
showstopper, that outside,
Okay.
yeah.
The engineering comments given to you by the two engineering departments, any of those a problem for you?
No, we'd be able to address all those. Okay.
All right.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you soon. All right.
Right, 'cause
Oh, finally we hear from our town planner.
nothing ever goes there, right?
Yeah.
There's really nothing ever goes there.
All right, discussion regarding cannabis establishment.
Okay, so I did a GIS exercise where I was able to,
So it is possible to do one of these.
Should have shared it.
so our existing medical marijuana dispensary facilities require a 1,000-foot buffer from religious institutions and private elementary and secondary schools. So I created a map showing the buffer of those types of uses. And not adding a residential buffer at all, you can see that the remaining areas are maybe not as desirable for this type of an establishment. So I think the conversation would be, unless the commission is looking to do a buffer of under 1,000 feet, I probably would not recommend adopting regulations.
1,000 feet looks like it is, am I reading this right, that it allows for, there was that one dispensary, the medical one that we were.
That was on the corner of,
That's
Yeah.
at-
yes,
that's at Wells and
that's,
South Deane,
It's
so
right
like-
there.
I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. So
Yeah, it's
like,
right there.
that would still be allowed, yeah.
well, this is just the religious and
School.
schools. So typically, most community has also adopted a 200-foot buffer from residential. And if you did that, that would also exclude that site and most of the other locations along the Silas Deane. Additionally, our medical regulations did not require any buffer from daycares or school facilities such as the math institution. So I did not include those, so if you put those in as well, it even further reduces the area.
Do we have those for liquor stores? Same thing, like we have the same list for,
Is this the map you're looking at?
Yes.
So which areas is allowed in here? I'm not following.
Basically none. If you maintained a 1,000-foot buffer and then additionally added a 200-foot buffer from all residential, there's really nowhere left.
Nowhere in town, okay.
So unless you were looking to, reduce the separation to 500 feet, and I could definitely go through that exercise, but that's the conversation that I wanted to have with you guys.
Why aren't these circles the same as the conversation we had with the first guy this morning? I mean, it's the same circles we were looking at for the package stores, right?
No,
1,000 feet? He's 1,500.
well, and they were only measuring from package stores. They weren't measuring from
Okay,
churches.
but again, we were
or-
asking them to go back to churches and schools and all that other stuff. So my point is, these circles are kind of the same.
Yeah, but we didn't ask them to go back.
But they're
No,
not
no, I
measured.
understand that, but I'm just saying these circles are somewhat the same.
Yeah.
But at 1,500 feet, it's worse than the 1,000.
Yeah,
So maybe we answered our question that it's really, you can't do it. Can't be done at 1,000 or 1,500, because we can barely do it at 1,000, so.
no,
Right.
I think
It might,
if we were asking that question, it would
Yeah.
be answered with,
these circles.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think, that would open up another question. If we're going to attach a 1,500 for package stores,
It's worse
would
than
you
this.
want a 1,500 for dispensaries? And that would even
No, but my
expand.
point is, it doesn't work with 1,000. It's
Right.
not working for 1,500, based on,
Right.
you can get drunk or get high, it's the same, places to go.
But I just want to be clear, it doesn't work at 1,000 because of the schools and churches.
And the
If you
200
ex-
per people.
And the 200, but if you exclude those, 1,000 would work. Right?
There are a few locations
Right, that's the
that
point
1,000
there.
would work, yeah.
Maybe 1,500 doesn't work for those guys, but 1,000 might.
1,000. It basically asks the argument, maybe just leave it alone, be done with it, Don't do anything. 'cause-
Yeah, I mean, not to mix the two hearings.
No,
but
I understand.
But I
This
thought-
is this a hearing right now? This isn't a hearing, we're
No,
just
No, this is
discussing.
discussion.
That's what I said, yeah.
Yeah. No, I thought the idea of putting fixed, finite, large separation distances from churches and schools and so forth for package stores was not somewhere we wanted to go.
That would be a non-starter for package stores.
So if basically we're interested, we really need to go to 500 then.
That's right.
So it's this kind of decision we need to think through. If we're interested, we got to go to 500.
Right.
And how many places would result if we went to 500? You don't know that, right?
I really didn't go through that exercise just because our existing medical regulations are 1,000. So I started at where our existing regulations were.
Which zones do we allow the medical?
The regional commercial and, I think that might actually be the only,
Town center?
it's prohibited in the town center and, yeah.
Okay.
That's permitted in the
Yeah.
town center.
That's right, the town center
That's
has to
through
be
permit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so actually, in our use schedule for dispensary facilities for medical, the only zone that they are allowed is within the town center.
Right, because that was what the applicant
What you set
wanted.
that up for,
Yeah.
Denise, huh? Oh. Town center zone, righty.
Well, that was
changed.
what the applicant was looking for, and that's where he had the property, so.
That was when that was.
I don't know, I guess, you know, in addition to separation distances, you know, we should give some thought to which zones we think this would be appropriate for, if any.
You know, why do we even, if we have business zoning, why do we even care about distances between? I mean, if the guy's at church, he needs to buy cannabis on the way home. Does it make a difference if he's 200 feet or 5? I'm seriously, what does difference does it make? As long as he's in a business zone, you know, three guys aren't gonna build next to each other because they wouldn't, I just don't, not sure what the distances really mean, other than the fact that's what people have done before.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like adding a distance.
And again, we're talking about dispensaries here, that's all we're talking about, right?
Well, I don't know, I assume that's all we're
Yeah, I
talking
mean,
about, is retail
according to top, it's
sales.
a dispensary.
Retail net growth.
Yeah.
I don't know. We have zoning for businesses and, I don't know, me have a ball, I guess, I don't know. I'm not sure what distances really mean. But you can't build one near a school, because there's no zoned businesses. I guess some corners maybe, but it's not anything really near a school, zone business zoning.
Well, middle school right here, everything is,
Yeah, I guess here, right, this is another
would-
oddball.
yeah.
But if somebody down the street, let's say at the Rite Aid, put a cannabis place in there, would that be a problem? Because so close to Silas Middle School, what difference would it make? I don't know.
No, it would probably be the church that wasn't happy about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and, you know, back to the original question I had, I mean, is the town center the zone that you want to have it in anyway? Or would you rather do like regional commercial or something like that?
So you're saying, we just look at areas and say, you can go in this area and do whatever you want, how many you want.
You look at the specific zone is what I think
Yeah.
Rich is saying.
Yeah, I mean,
Decide where we want to go with it.
yeah, I mean,
If you want 10 in there, put 10 in there, if that's what they want to do, but they would never happen, but.
no. No, I mean, and it's kind of like, if you're going to do it, where do you want to have it?
Right.
You know, and you X out the residential zones, you probably X out the village business, you
Right.
you know, cross out a couple of the others, you know, like town center or, you know,
So we take a map and just draw squares where we say this is okay zone, you can do whatever you want in there.
Well, it would just be how much from a school or a church?
No, what if we don't, do we care about, I
Same
know
way
the
that we
church,
would
but do we
apply it
really
as a
care?
liquor store, though.
well, I know some places, they just basically say that if the applicant comes in, they have to show the churches, the schools and so forth, and how far they are away, and the commission can decide whether it's a problem or
Just a
not,
judgment.
because, yeah, because frankly, it, you know, it's like if you're on the Berlin Turnpike, which is, you know, a 4 or 5 lane divided access highway, you know, and there's a daycare center behind the Cumberland Farms or something like that. but
Chances are it's not.
Still within the 1,000 feet. It's not like kids are gonna get in their stroller and walk up, you know, to the Atlas tile or something like that. So, you know, you just kind of have to look at it in context.
So we should make the regulations similar to the package store regulations. Right. There you go. I mean, so we had a conversation, big circle, but
worked,
make it,
haven't they?
and it works, I guess, you know. to the
Yeah, I mean,
judgment
I
of us.
you know, I guess the question is, you know, just kind of the hierarchy of questions is, you know, which zones do you, if any, do you want to have it in? And do you feel the need for a separation distance, or just kind of, you know, look at each site on its own? You know, because frankly, I don't think on when the industry is fully built out, if we were to allow it here, there'd be more than 2 in town.
You know, you're making a point there, that latter point about the distances around all. Maybe we ought to just say certain criteria and wherever it could be, as long as it's a business zone type thing.
Or just change it from liquor stores to liquor stores and dispensaries.
There you go, that's
Let the
exactly right.
applications come in and then we
Yeah,
assess
that make it
them.
real easy.
Almost.
The argument of trying to add a distance so that we dissuade and don't have to do our jobs is weird, so, you know, at least we can see the applications and then we can debate them and.
Make a judgment on the
Yeah.
location based upon.
I'd agree with that, I'd vote for that. Go back, yeah. Because like Rich said, chances are, if you even get 2 here, the next time you'd be lucky. Well, unlucky or lucky, whatever you want to think about it. Not gonna be many.
I think that kind of the preliminary question is, you know, whether there are people that have serious objections to doing it at all, so, you know, I know a couple of the people who aren't here tonight have expressed concerns about it in the past.
Just not allowing it, just be done with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, instead of adding a.
That wouldn't bother me one way. But that should come from these guys though, right? Town council?
Well, I think it already did.
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be honest with you, I support that also. There's plenty of places you could drive to within a half mile to a mile and get it. without-
1,500 feet?
No, I'm talking leave town and go to whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, there's one on the Berlin Turnpike.
So there you go. So
Stone's throw.
why, so why do we even want to bother with it?
Money.
3% of the gross
Well, it is.
revenues.
Yeah,
What are the revenues, what do they really pan out to be?
3%.
I know I've missed a meeting or two, but
Well, yeah, it's 3%, and, you know, there's certain limited things you can use it on.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it can't be used just.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
for
just,
Tax coffers.
yeah,
Oh,
That's.
light up and
Good
hire
thing.
some more teachers. No, I mean, it's all, you know, geared toward mitigating the impact of
Right.
the
Well,
industry.
what's the typical revenues of a little business? I mean, would they do $1 million a year?
Oh, yeah.
Really? Like the place in Berlin Turnpike, you think you're doing $1 million a year?
Yep.
Do you really?
Easily.
Easily. I wouldn't bet that, but anyway.
15,000 a day, depends where you're
Yeah,
at.
these places are like people lining up.
Yeah, we're not lining up out there.
Well, I mean, and they're not buying Fritos.
No,
You
no,
know,
I
it's a-
understand,
yeah.
but I'm just saying, $1 million with, at $50 to $100 a bill, that's a lot of people walking in and out to get to $1 million.
Yeah.
Okay, I have no sense for that, I mean, so you think it's bigger than that, so that'd give you town $30,000 of revenue if it's $1 million, $2 million, you know, something.
There's billboards in Connecticut for Massachusetts dispensaries for a
Right.
reason. People like travel very far.
No, but
to go
those,
get
but
them.
those dispensaries are pretty big, though, they're not like anything, like little storefronts we're talking about. Yeah, they're pretty big.
Springfield Inso's like a normal building.
Is that the one by the Hall of Fame?
It's like 91, one of the first exits.
Yeah.
It's like right off the highway.
Yeah, it's next to the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Yeah. But that's like a CVS type building.
But you think we're doing $1 million a year? in
Yeah.
revenue? Do you?
Maybe
Okay.
3.
100%.
Yeah, 3 million, so that's $100,000 in tax, that's a fair amount of revenue then.
These places are like, they're like Apple stores. You know, it's not just like a convenience store. And
Right.
you go in and you're catered to and like you're given a limit for how much you're allowed to purchase. Like, so people just purchase it and then they come back like a week later or something. Like, it's big business. So
Rich, do you want us to
saying that
look
we
at-
don't want it in our town is just weird.
Want us to look at the specific zonings that we have in place and bring that to, or are you looking for Denise to give us some suggestions, or?
Yeah, I don't know, do you
Where
have
do we
any
wanna go with this?
suggestions? Just, I mean, I'm not putting you on the spot purposely.
No, I mean, I had anticipated, after seeing the separation distances, just having a conversation about, you know, what direction you wanted me to take in terms of continuing to.
Well, the circles don't work, right, so.
No, I like the idea of focusing on specific zones that we have in town.
Yeah,
They're there for a reason.
I agree, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess, no, I agree.
Keep
I
it
mean,
that simple, just to get it on the table.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and, you know, if you have a professional judgment as to which zones for us would be most appropriate, because, you know, I didn't want to belabor it, and I'm not going to do it here now, but I mean, you know, arbitrary separation distances for things may work well in West Hartford and Glastonbury and East Haddam, but, you know, we've probably got 7 square miles of developable land that's fully developed here, so, you know, once you start drawing circles, you know, you don't have a lot left. And,
Good point.
you know,
Go the other way, yeah.
right?
So we wanted to put together some squares in town, and we say those are the places we do it.
No, there are examples of municipalities that have adopted good definitions and clear special permit standards. So I would, you know, bring that type of language before you, and depending on the use, we could figure out a zone and based on, you know, the land area that the zone occupies.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah, I'll support that effort.
Okay. Anybody else?
And so I'm gonna just keep it to mirror almost then our existing alcoholic beverages language, where we're just, the commission is gonna take proximity into consideration and not do a specific separation distance.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the
Right.
last one I saw, like it was Stratford, where it
Yep.
puts the burden on the applicant to
Right.
show where all these things are.
Okay.
Maybe Enfield was one too.
Where all, what things are?
All of the uses that you may want to consider keeping it away from.
Oh, okay.
It's the onus on the applicant.
Yeah, the list, yeah. For age selected, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Rather than use distance circles, yeah, I agree.
No, but I did find the distance circles to be very informative as far as, you know, what there is out there. I mean, and, you know, one of the other things.
Those restricted areas. though.
Yeah, I mean, and if you start putting in, you know, basically for-profit educational centers and daycares.
Right, right.
You know, it's gonna be a sea of red, and, you know, it may just come down to the luck of the draw as to, you know, which Silas Deane storefront a church is in 1 year as opposed to, you know, 2 years later, that
Exactly.
they really don't have anything to do with the character of the neighborhood.
Can somebody start their own religion in their house and
And, you know,
In a
in some of
shed.
these, a site might be right on the edge of, within one of these circles, so they don't always make.
Yeah, I mean, and if the places are separated by like the 91 overpass or something,
Yeah.
you know, it would be different than if it was actually truly abutting.
with the Russian School of Math, like, would that qualify as a?
That's what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Under
That's-
the,
I know that's,
under the medical, it doesn't, but
that doesn't qualify for like the liquor store now, though.
no.
Because, yeah, we wouldn't have even, no, it was that same building that we were looking at, never mind.
All right. Anything else on this? All right. Minutes of September 7th.
Make a
Move to
motion to approve,
the
Mr. Chairman.
September 7th minutes.
All right. Motion by
Now,
Joe,
don't ask me if
seconded
I've
by
read it.
George.
I've read some of this, but I have, you know, I don't like reading these minutes. You wanna know why I've decided after all these years? It's like going through a meeting twice. And I don't like
Yeah.
it.
You've already voted to.
Yeah,
was the
once
day
is-
you used to
once
enjoy
is
it.
enough.
George, it was the day you used to enjoy it.
Exactly.
What's happening?
It's like deja vu all over again. All right, motion has been made and seconded on the September 7th minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstentions.
There's
Okay.
3 of us that were in.
Yeah.
Dave, Tony, and Brian abstain. Next is minutes of October 4th.
Make a somebody else make a motion? I'll make a motion. I don't care.
I'll second it.
All right, motion by George, second by Dave for the October 4th minutes. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
I wasn't here.
Okay, Joe and Tony are abstaining. Staff reports.
I really don't have anything additional to report. I don't know if you guys have driven by the Atlas Tile Plaza, but the demolition's taken place.
Yeah, it was done
Yeah.
today.
I see a pile of steel there, yeah.
Well, it was like flat.
If there's any other property that you guys have questions that I can update you on.
I was talking this morning about the Berlin Turnpike. We didn't have to approve those big pillars they put up. I just still can't believe they did that.
Yeah, I was very shocked.
Amazing, I
The
just,
feedback that we've gotten from that is,
ridiculous, yeah.
I'm not exactly sure what the reasoning for.
They should have had to get approval from us.
Yeah, they're eye-catching.
Look at me.
The stoplight.
No, we're looking at you because you're a state guy.
Yeah, right.
They had to come out of your building.
I am not a state guy.
I keep looking and wondering when they're gonna start them going, but they seem to be taking forever. Yeah. I don't know why they need them that big.
They got a deal.
Can't be like any electronic equipment.
Yeah, they got a deal on them, wind loads, the spans.
For the tolls.
Are they hurricane proof and all that stuff?
I-
I think those are earthquake, hurricane, tsunami.
Probably are. They look like they should be.
It's for the tolls and the bar scanners to keep track of where everybody's going.
You know, the other stupid thing that bothers me about those is something that's happening because the feds require it. And that's what bothers me about the federal government getting involved in. Out there, you notice that there are no sidewalks on the
There's no
Berlin
sidewalks,
Turnpike.
right, but they have
But they
buttons.
have ramps, because any construction of road or that, you have to put sidewalks in next to it. Because especially if it's gonna be future, maybe sidewalks along the turnpike, and it could be, but why do you have to build them ahead of time? Things are expensive, those ramps.
So how come they don't have to do this on Silas Highway?
I
This is
don't know.
Berlin Turnpike. I mean, wouldn't do the same thing?
Just,
No, the wind
I get
blows
mad when I see
faster.
What?
Who said
That's a good, that's a who says that, right? It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, that-
Anyways,
I know, after hearing for 30-plus years about not wanting to encourage people to walk on the Berlin Turnpike to put in
Push buttons.
crosswalks and pushwalks. Yeah.
Denise, what's going on with the bikeway?
We were awarded a grant through DEP that we just signed last week for a study to do a multimodal trail between Hartford and Wethersfield.
So there was something moving.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. Public comment?
Are you sure, Tom?
I'll make one comment. If you're talking about zones for dispensaries, you don't want to have it in the village district, but it's okay on Walker Hill where there's already 2 package stores on Walker Hill.
As close to your house as possible, right? As close to your house as possible?
Yeah, that's close. I just don't understand why you're gonna say, we use the same regulations as a package store. There's package stores, there used to be package stores in Old Wethersfield.
No, I don't think that was what we meant when we said use the same regulations as package stores. We were talking about the undue concentration language, not which zones they'd be permitted in. Yeah, because I think probably both of those package stores are grandfathered at this point,
Right.
because they're in residential zones.
Your colleagues haven't discussed this among themselves at all, or?
Pardon me?
Your colleagues on the council have not discussed this further since they shifted it off to us?
No, we talked about it and we voted to work toward prohibiting any sale of recreational. But that's now on your table.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
On Wolcott Hill Road where D&D is, that is zoned GB,
Really?
Yes.
Just that one?
that block.
All right, so maybe that wouldn't be a good one for dispensaries.
And you got one at Jordan Lane, Walker and Jordan Lane.
Is that a business zone too? That block?
I believe it's office. Carbone had just come in here.
Oh, right,
Changed that
yeah.
split zone, yeah.
Okay.
What about the little Knott Street Market? Would you sell marijuana in there?
That's in a residential zone, yeah.
Other than the fact we haven't decided that though. Okay.
We'll leave it in Denise's hands.
Goody.
Yeah.
All right, anything else? Not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So made.
No, I think Tom should make the motion. He hasn't done anything.
Tom?
yet.
Tom, you ready to go?
Silent Tom tonight.
Yeah, I know.
All right.
Okay.
So I'll move to adjourn.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion by Tom, second by Dave. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Snow and ice conditions.